Greetings. This is another tale from the Oracle. I am the Oracle's apprentice, and I bring to you the story titled Please Tame My Wild Child. Catherine Maple was not the apple in anyone's eye, but she wasn't unattractive either. She was very tall for a human at an outstanding 6 feet 4 inches, with a hazelnut color to her skin and eyes that were bright amber. Her body was toned and layered with muscles from the hard work she labored in the wood mill. She was half orc and half human. Her father was Sir Isaac Maple, the former royal slave who was purchased by the Mapleton family to serve Beric Mapleton as his errand boy. But when Beric fell on the battlefield, Isaac guarded Beric's possessions from the orc raiders with his life, including Beric's body. He didn't defeat any orcs in a raw emotion of vengeance, but he quietly, with stoic assessment, defended it. Parrying and blocking any would-be attempts to grab or strike at him, the other knights took to his courage and his commitment, such that he was knighted in the royal chamber that evening. The Mapleton family granted him the last name Maple in honor of his service. Isaac would later come across a captured orc scout that was going to be sent to the red light district. Instead of ignoring the situation entirely, he paid for her freedom and sent her back with a horse. This created a blood oath between them, and one Isaac found unfavorable due to the inconvenience. So he told the orc woman when she was done with her service as a scout and was no longer an enemy, then come seek him out and he would fulfill the blood oath. He would not use the oath to make her complicit in any way. It was 3 years later that she showed up on his doorstep in the middle of the night. He let her in and told her that he wanted to fulfill the oath by her living with him. She would take care of tasks at his home while he was in battle, and she would stay with him. After 8 months of them living together, it became less about the blood oath and more about deeper feelings coming to the surface. The orc's name was Savina of the Bear Tusk clan. By the 15th month of them living together, Savina was pregnant with Catherine. By the end of the second year, Savina and Isaac had a little girl with the dark skin of Isaac and the eyes of Savina. Catherine grew up watching her father take care of his sword by sharpening and maintaining the oil on the blade to prevent rusting. She also walked with her mother in the woods from time to time to gather herbs and edible plants, as well as wild fruit and nuts. The one thing she loved the most was when her father would cut down a dying tree and split the wood up for the fireplace. She loved the smell of wood, especially as it burned. The first tragedy came when Catherine was 5 years old and a soldier came to their door. He brought news that in the last battle, Isaac was struck down after defeating the orc chieftain. He would not be coming home again. The pain struck Catherine and Savina hard. Catherine mourned her father in the day, and in the few moments she slept at night, Savina mourned Isaac openly. With Isaac's achievement in slaying the chieftain, the orcs surrendered in the war. There wasn't so much as peace, but an agreed silence between the two entities. The royal family didn't approve of Savina as Isaac's wife, and they were never formally married either by orc or human customs, in large part because of the war. But they couldn't deny Catherine was as his daughter. Her face was similar in shape and bore a striking resemblance. She was gifted a medal for Isaac's sacrifice, and every soldier that served under Isaac put together a contribution of gold for Catherine. Savina kept the gold until Catherine turned 20. On the 15th year of Isaac's death, Savina and Catherine went to the gravestone and placed flowers on the gravestone in the human tradition, and Savina sang the song of ancestry in Orcish tongue. Catherine sang it as well since she was taught the words by her mother over time. When they left, Savina gave her the gold that was gifted to her as a child 15 years ago. She never counted it, never even looked inside to gaze upon it. When Catherine opened the bag and counted the gold coins inside, it was enough gold for 5 years of service in the royal palace. Over 500 gold coins. Savina took the gold and bought a bigger house for her and her mother. She then bought the tools and equipment to build a sawmill. It took 3 years with the help of her mother and hiring a couple trustworthy hands, but the sawmill was complete. In the first month of Catherine's mill being complete, she completed 4 jobs. 3 were supplying firewood to the night quarters, the town inn, and the town blacksmith. The last was to the town carpenter. In the following month, she fulfilled 6 jobs. The previous customer she had last month as well as 2 new customers in the village down the road. In the third month, she completed 12 jobs. In addition to the previous 6 customers, 2 merchants who came into town, and 4 new customers in a different village. By this point, her name was known throughout the land. If you wanted quality wood, Catherine's mill was the place to get it. The work was hard, but with her orcish strength, she completed the work and she enjoyed it. In the months that followed, Savina began to worry about her daughter. Catherine was successful and still had plenty of gold from her father's soldiers, but the men would not court her. Some would make their jokes about her brutish strength. Others would condemn her orc blood and find her unworthy as a marriage partner. Regardless of their insecurities or prejudice, no man would court her. The months became years, and the years became a decade. Catherine was now 35. Her body was in peak condition. Her back was broad and muscular with abs that were toned and legs that were thick and powerful. Her hair was tied in an orcish top bun when she worked, but at night, when she would let it down to wash it and maintain it, it would flow all the way to the back of her legs. Her voice was deep, commanding, and forward, not masculine. Her wood mill was the most popular wood in the region. She now had 15 people working under her. 3 were young children taking apprenticeship, 2 girls and 1 boy. 7 men were carpenters who would help work the mill as a discount for the wood they needed. The last 5 were 3 women and 2 men who helped work the mill full time. She now had over 30 customers from over 10 different villages. She had 2 blacksmiths and 1 carpenter try to court her, but Catherine didn't find them suitable partners. It was at this time that in the old orc village, a new bear-tusked chieftain was being celebrated. The new chieftain was determined to improve the quality of their tools and weapons by gaining trade with humans. He had heard of Catherine, the half-orc human that made the finest wood for carpenters or blacksmith. He took 2 warriors and traveled to her mill. When he arrived at the mill, the workers stopped immediately. The mill was the quietest it had ever been. Catherine stepped out and met the orc clan in front. Her mother saw the orcs and immediately stepped out to the house and found an interesting spot to sit on the porch. The orc chieftain ascertained the area, taking an acknowledging glance at the workers, the structure of the mill, the older orc woman on the porch, and the tall, dark-skinned woman stepping towards him with the full confidence of a war general. He held a hand up to his 2 warriors, instructing them in silence to hold their position and wait. Catherine Maple, daughter of Isaac Maple, I am Chieftain Lauza, under the Bear-Tusk clan. I have come to request the business of trade. Catherine looked at Lauza, gazed at the 2 warriors who were behind him, noticing they were as unarmed as orcs could be, and gathered a look at her mother sitting on the porch. And what do you offer? Herbs and vegetables from our gardens, as well as spices, Catherine thought on this. She mulled the idea in her head, but didn't find value in it. But more than that, she wanted to know for certain her wood wouldn't help destroy the land her father died to protect. And what do you intend to use my wood for? Lauza looked at her with the skepticism her question deserved. The same your human customers use it for. Catherine interjected quickly to Lauza's snide remark. Most of my customers are carpenters who use the wood for furniture. Can you say the same? But not all of them. The steady response sparked more tension in the air than yelling it. The workers and warriors took in breaths that they had forgotten to inhale. Catherine took a small step toward Lauza. It was slow, deliberate. She folded her arms and straightened up even more, exuding her height over the chieftain, who was several inches shorter. The warriors leaned forward to move, but the chieftain held up his arm to silently say, "Don't move. You come here in the tradition of peace, only carrying daggers at your waist. Speak my name, speak my father's name, and ask for my wood in the hopes to destroy the land my father died to protect. I will not pour blood or spit on my father's grave. If you want my wood, then you can get it from the carpenters after they've shaped it to furniture. But I will not sell my wood for your blacksmith." Lauza looked at Catherine, and a flicker of a grin touched the edges of his face, near the cheeks, but not quite touching it. He rubbed his face as if to scratch a beard, but seemed like more of a thinking habit. The chieftain then slowly took his hand down from his face and shook his head, as if the idea spoke to him and he didn't agree with the words. Very well. The chieftain held up his right hand and grabbed the dagger on his waist with his left. The workers immediately shifted to anxiety as they looked at the weapon in the chieftain's hand. Savina stood up slowly, not moving, just standing as if to get a better look. The chieftain took the blade and cut his hand until he drew blood. As the blood dripped to the ground, he placed a bloody handprint on the ground. The two warriors went from a look of calm to confusion as everyone else joined in on the unknown action. Savina, understanding the notion, held her breath and used every bit of her strength to not walk to her daughter's side. Catherine Maple, I, Chieftain Lauza, recognize you as worthy to be my partner and make blood oath pact with you and all connected to you. So long as I am chieftain, any enemy against you is an enemy against me. Catherine stood in awe of the declaration and shook her head in disbelief. That's a strong promise for my wood. Lauza shook his head. Not just the wood whisperer. You are more valuable than the wood. I know I don't have your trust, but through this vow, I aim to earn it. I truly just wish to make the clan stronger, not to attack, but to be better defended. Since the war ended, we never tried to improve our way of living. We bickered and argued over petty revenge and which leaders to follow. And by the time we finished dividing ourselves even further, our best crafters and workers were either gone or dead. We are losing to ourselves, and I refuse to become the last chieftain to a clan with over 300 years of history. Lauza gazes into Catherine's eyes with an iron will of determination that forces her to look back. The echo of Savina walking down the steps of the porch breaks the silence that in turn makes everyone draw their gaze over to her. On her behalf, she accepts the vow, Chieftain Lauza. Catherine sucks the air out of her teeth as she grips her fists into a tight coil for control over the emotions bubbling to the surface. Mama! Savina glances at her daughter with a stare of defiance to her protest. For a brief second, the warm, kind orc that Catherine knew all her life was buried immediately by the pride of the scout she still was. One of the warriors tore a piece of cloth off his cloak and gave it to the chieftain so he could stop the bleeding. The chieftain accepted it and wrapped his hand tightly. Elder Savina, the chieftain says as he places his right hand over his heart and bows to her. Savina waves a gesture off as a nonchalant dismissal. I may carry the wisdom of an elder, but I'm clanless, and I could never carry that title. Furthermore, you honor my blood with vow and commitment to my child. Please care for my daughter. Catherine looked at her mother as if she was seeing her for the first time. I don't need to be courted, mother. Hush, child. Your father didn't die on the battlefield for you to be alone by yourself forever. You may not be lonely, but you are without suitor. Bury the pain and stop surrendering to it. Catherine's emotions swirled like fire dancing in the wind. She closed her eyes while inhaling a breath and held it. The exhale was palpable to everyone around her. Lauza, Catherine spoke as the chieftain turned to her. Before the cold touches this ground, I will travel to your village and stay among you and your people. The end of that sentence provoked a silent gasp among the workers. Lauza nodded his head in agreement and looked to his warriors. In Orcish language, he basically says, move to our village, and they all turn around and begin leaving. Once they are out of sight and more importantly out of ear distance, some of the workers walk up to Catherine and begin questioning if she was honest in her statement. My father didn't raise a liar, and my mother believes this is the best for me. I choose to accept that. The next few days were filled with questions and quelling rumors of the orcs that came to the wood mill. When Catherine wasn't answering questions, she was completing the jobs that came in. The days turned to weeks, and the warmth was turning to a chill. As the first leaves began to shift, Savina looked at her daughter and watched her make preparations to leave. At first, it was training certain workers on how to find the trees that were dying to cut. Then it was training where each cut should be taken depending on the job. Then it was training the staff on how to temper, shave, and shape the wood. By the first chill, the workers could do every job without her having to look over their shoulder. She was now spending each day going through her things to sort what was essential and what wasn't. In the end, she had about 5 things that she had packed, along with some clothes. One was her father's sharpening tools for his sword. The second was her mother's notes on herbs, flowers, and tracking from when she was a scout. The third was a carved wooden guardian that she had made when she decided to make the wood mill. The fourth was the dagger her mother and father got her. And the last thing was a leaf that was saved in between some parchment from the first tree she ever cut down with her father. These items were a part of her and reminded her of not just who she was, but where she came from and why she was who she was. They were an anchor to her past and present, and only the next steps would determine what she would anchor to for her future. The morning was crisp with a dim-lit sunrise that felt like the sun was hiding from the sky. Only a soft glow let you know it was still there somewhere. She stepped out on the porch, exhaling a breath that felt symbolic of letting go of her attachment to the house. As she took one step down the steps off the porch, the door opened and she looked back to see her mother, Savina. You finally leaving, child? Yes, mother. She smiled and opened the door as Catherine took a step back to meet her, and they embraced for an eternal moment. Catherine breathed in her mother's scent with the hug, committing the scent to a memory she didn't want to ever let go of. Savina smiled as she rubbed her daughter's broad back and then kissed her cheek. Go prove those orcs are not worthy of you, but you accept their shortcomings because their weakness is proof of your strength. Catherine smiled at that comment. I will, mother. They both let go of the entrance with the fondness of a smile. Catherine turns her back slowly to her mother as she begins walking towards the Bear Tusk clan village. Savina had given direction to Catherine after the orcs had left all those months ago, so she knew where she was going. It was a 2-day journey towards the valley before you reached the mountain path. The first night she camped out lighting a fire and eating some bread and smoked meat that Savina had prepared for her. The second night was warm enough to not need a fire. Catherine saved the smoked meat and ate some nuts and wild berries that she managed to find on the path that were still good. When she arrived at the village, it was near high noon. The sun casted over the mountains and shined its warmth over the valley. The village was blanketed with farmland on the outskirts with a couple of houses. There was even a large barn and silo that stored some of the produce from the farms. A path was carved from the road that led to a huge barn door style gate with thick wood doors. 3 warriors were posted outside the gate, 2 on the ground and 1 was in a post on top of the wall. As Catherine approached, the warrior on the right took initiative to confront her approach. She quickly spoke in Orcish, roughly saying, I come to honor blood oath from chieftain. The orc on the wall looked at her with a questioning look as the 2 on the ground looked at each other. They spoke to each other with a dialect Catherine was unfamiliar with, and then the one on the left went inside. The one on the right held Catherine to confirm her claim. After a few moments passed, one of the warriors that came with the chieftain came out with the guard, who left and escorted her to Lauza. Lauza was standing in the middle of a strategy room surrounded by several other orcs with maps and paperwork spread out on a large table. When Lauza's gaze touched Catherine, he instantly made a sound that wasn't quite a whistle, but was something unique entirely in of itself. After the sound was heard, instantly everyone stopped what they were doing and turned to exit the room. Catherine looked at the orc that had an unmeasurable weight on his shoulders. He slumped as if to reveal the real damage behind the curtain of his chieftain title was something that he owed me. No resistance, no showmanship, just straight release of the tension he had been feeling and not bothering to have any effort to hide the facade. That bad, huh? A half chuckle slipped as Lauza took a breath and exhaled the tension he forgot he was holding. Maybe so. I'm glad you are here. He looked back to make sure there was a chair behind him, and he began to sit. Catherine put her things on the floor to ease the weight and leaned against the wall. I may have grown up with an exiled orc mother, but even I don't know what's next after a chieftain pledges a blood oath for me. We figure it out together. That's what happens next. Not forceful or with tricks, just truthful actions. And anything else muddies the water and makes it poison. Catherine nodded her head in agreement. Right. So what was that meeting about? Lauza shakes his head and rubs his chin. The oldest war in the history of life. Politics versus pride and purpose. There's another orc clan about 1-day travel through the forest that wants to swallow our tribe and make us a sub-clan. We would essentially be adopted if we do that, but we'll be able to get all the trade and supplies we need to thrive and grow into a true tribe. If we don't, they'll most likely attack us and just take our land and claim it for themselves. What does they really want? The farms. There's not many places that can grow the amount of produce we put out. It's why I offered that at first for the wood. She nodded agreement and slowly thought on what he said. This other orc clan wanted to use tradition and instincts as a weapon against them to get the farmland. If there was a way to leverage that, they could gain the upper hand in talks. Catherine understood this much, but something was missing from this line of thinking. Is there a way to leverage the lands against them? If they want the farms and are framing it with the idea that they can help revolutionize this village, then essentially they must be dying too since they need your farms. Lauza nodded his head and continued the motion of rubbing his chin. Interesting point. Did you scout their area? He gave her a blank look as if Catherine had insulted his intelligence. Just asking. We did, but we didn't look at their food source. We just noticed the size of the village and how everything was well built. You looked at it through the eyes of what you were lacking, the same way they are looking at you. Lauza's eyes shifted under the wisdom Catherine bestowed him. Are you trying to resolve our oath already? Louser joked with a slight grin which caused Catherine to slightly smile. I gave you my word I would be here, and I'm here. Now where can I put my things down? I'd like to bathe before I start cooking dinner. Louser stood up out of the chair as Catherine picked up her things and followed him out of the room. The two of them went down the hall and through a curtain door that revealed an open outdoor bathing area. It was thick columns supporting the ceiling that lined up to the end of the room like a runaway to a giant-sized tub shaped by the stone itself. A waterfall stream was just beyond the room, but a metal funnel slide was tacked into the mountain under the waterfall and could pivot to the tub. I'll get someone to begin preparing it for you. It's fine. I can do it. You should get back to your council and prepare a counter to what the other orc clan proposed. He nodded his head in agreement and began to head out. She unlocked the funnel slide and shifts it to over the tub, and the water begins to fill it. As the water starts to fill, she lights a fire under the stone tub beneath it in a hollowed-out pit. Once the tub is full enough, she moves the funnel slide back to the waterfall and locks it in place. Catherine grabs some scented herbs and flowers and tosses them into the bath. Once the air fills with the scent, she removes her clothes and steps into the tub. Instantly relaxing, the tension in her body dissipates with an evaporation that calms her mind and steadies her heart. After she finished in the bath and released the drainage to dispel the water, Catherine puts her clothes on and wanders through the manor until she finds a kitchen in the back of the building. She finds some vegetables and grabs a pot and fills it with water as she lights the stove to start heating the water to a boil. While cutting the vegetables, a tall orc woman comes into the kitchen. She's a young warrior, probably just starting her 20s, with broad shoulders and firm muscles that was still growing. Her tusks were thick and short, with her hair braided into a ponytail. Her eyes carried the rare purple tint, and her skin was forest green. Her face took one long look at Catherine, a human cooking in the kitchen. No signs of her being a slave. No signs of her being forced against her will. Willingly, in her house, a chieftain's house. Who are you? She asked plainly, flat, not with confusion, though she didn't comprehend, just seeking an answer. Catherine Maple, daughter to Sir Isaac Maple. Sir, is that a title of some sort? Yes. Who are you? Tavla, daughter to Chieftain Louser. It was Catherine's turn to look at the orc standing in front of her now. Really look. Her face did bear some resemblance to Louser in the face structure with the round cheeks and thick neck. At that moment, we heard the door open and both of us turned to Louser in the doorway. He took a breath and looked at me. Catherine, Tavla, I see you've met. Father, we just met. Did you plan it this way? Not remotely. Tavla, let me and Catherine talk. I'll talk to you shortly. Tavla kept her eyes on Catherine as she left the room, never lowering her guard, never taking her eyes off the enemy. Speaking silently, you and I still have unfinished business. Louser filled in the space left by his daughter. Catherine continued her focus on vegetables in a pot that was boiling water with a fervent of almost spilling over. As Catherine took the vegetables that were already cut and put them in the pot, she glanced at the solemn face of Louser. What do you wish to say, Louser? I had Tavla when I was very young. At the time, the village was still fighting with each other. Her mom was a previous chieftain's daughter, the one your father killed. She unfortunately didn't survive the birthing. Catherine finished chopping the vegetables and began mincing some herbs and added them to the pot. She then put a lid on it and moved the pot from the fire so it wouldn't cook too fast. She looked at Louser while wiping her hands on a cloth. Take me for a walk, Louser. Louser's eyes went through a transition of bewildered confusion, unable to process the turn in the conversation. He expected anger, rage maybe even a barrage of questions, not an invitation to something else entirely. To where? Around the village. Louser didn't see the trap in the request. He couldn't find the underlying hook or added cost to her request, so he did. He showed her the training grounds where some warriors were practicing their battle formations and weapon techniques. Then to the blacksmith, who was an elder orc, who with two young orc children were helping him work the forge. Then to the women's circle, where about 3 pregnant orc women sat and helped teach 3 other orc children with 2 elder orcs. And finally to the vast farmland surrounding the village outside the gates. There were 6 farmers, each with over 5 acres of farming produce. When they got to the barn and produce silo, they stopped and leaned on the fence to talk. I'm not upset about you not telling me you have a daughter. Although you have made an oath to me, I haven't even committed to that oath. I've only just begun to let it breathe. While a third equation does present a new level of challenges, the core is about us, starting with me. And where are we, Catherine? You've helped me more in the times I've known you than the council vowed to my service. I'm a warrior. I became chieftain through test of combat, but what we need is someone with political knowledge. We have only just started, chieftain. I'm aware that I'm needed and could greatly help you achieve the prosperity you are seeking. But the question needed to be answered is, am I wanted? Do you truly wish to accept me as your partner, not just in counsel, but in your heart? Only then will we know what this is. Catherine looked to the sun's light dying as it fades from the contrast yellow bright orange glow to a burnt out red. Let's head back. The soup should be ready. When the two of them get back to the kitchen, Lauza went looking for his daughter to talk to her as well. After they finished talking, they came to the dining table to see Catherine sitting there with bowls of soup poured out for the two of them, as well as some smoked leftover meat that she had received from her mother. They sat down and all of them ate together. Tavla enjoyed the meat, but Lauza really enjoyed the soup. In the days and weeks following, life within the village became a puzzle slowly being put together, one corner piece at a time, filling out the edges and then the gaps. Lauza's days were full of meetings with the council on making new policies, training his warriors, and enforcing them to do scout work while on patrol. Tavla, through the patience and temperament of any normal child, found small ways to test the boundaries with her father and Catherine. When Catherine had prepared a meal, Tavla would come back late from a hunt saying she wanted to eat the meat she brought back. Sometimes Catherine would cook the meal and meat, and sometimes she would butcher it and store it till the next day. In other ways, Tavla would challenge Catherine on orc customs and traditions. Some she knew because of her mother, and others were things that her mother either didn't know because she was just a scout warrior and not part of the chieftain's household, or something she just never brought to her attention. Soon the weather turned cold. No longer the slight chill with some warmth lingering, the air was getting bitter cold with a bite to it. Tavla sometimes would go on a hunt for several days to track a prey. Other times she would volunteer for scout work on the far edges of the border to avoid being home. This left Lauza conflicted. On one hand, he appreciated the time that he and Catherine were able to spend together without Tavla interrupting them. He would come home after shouting and demanding things that others wanted to solve with bloodshed, to a cooked meal on the table, a warm fire going in the fireplace, and a warm bath ready to be soaked in. Then she would listen to his worries about how the meetings with the council and the other clans were going, and she would fill in her perspective on the matter, usually providing an answer he had been racking his brain all day trying to understand. And the peace that filled the house was a quiet that didn't need to be filled. On the other hand, with his daughter Tavla out in the wilderness, he worried about her safety and was left with the time to converse with her on the new dynamic shifting into place. The morning would bring a table with breakfast on it and warm tea. Catherine would head out to prepare the firewood for the evening, then attend to any cleaning that needed to be done as well as any repairs in the house. After all that was complete, she would start preparing dinner and a bath. While it was simple and comforting, Lauza was becoming more attached to her presence. He was finding himself thinking more about wanting to do more with Catherine, from desires of embracing her as she stood by the stove cooking the next soup, to holding her hand as they sat in silence. Nothing dramatic, but expanding the simplicity of their budding relationship. On a particular day where the world decided to blanket the ground in the coldest foot of snow to date, Tyler returned from a scout mission and found her father with a facial expression she had never seen before. Every morning of her life, Lauza would stare out the window as if in search of something coming that would never arrive. A cup of tea in one hand that would sit until it was too cold to drink, and then he would pour out the rest onto the ground and head out to meet with the council or his warriors for training. But this particular morning was different. Instead, his eyes were keen on Catherine rolling the dough to make bread, drinking his warm tea that never got cold, and finished it, not pouring any of it out. By the time the teacup was empty, the bread was cooked and sliced on the table with cheese and some charred meat. Her instincts rejected the feeling. It screamed of an immovable change that was rearranging everything she grew up to know as facts and promises. She didn't see a way around it, so her inner warrior only saw one way, and that was to go through it. After she finished the meal, she stood up from the table, slowly, gathered her armor and weapons, walked over to the table where Catherine and Lauza still sat, and slammed her fist on the table in between them. Not hard, with enough authority to break this move between them and get their attention. Is this really happening? Is she really going to be my new mother? The two of them looked at each other and then back to Tavla. Lauza looked at this cup with wishing he had tea in it to drink. Catherine finished the food in her mouth slowly, giving her time to think. Both knew the answer to the question hanging in the air. Neither of them knew the answer would be spoken out loud. Catherine decided to break the silence first. Your father gave a blood oath to me. I have chosen to honor that oath by seeing firsthand what that oath would mean. And up to this point, I have not regretted it. I would like to remain here on the condition my mother can join me here as an elder. Lauza nodded his head in agreement. Yes, of course. She is as welcome here as you are. Her wisdom would be a major asset to us all. Tavla shook her head. Then I challenge her rights for leadership by combat. The statement earned a glance from both Lauza and Catherine that was one of astonishment and intrigue. Lauza exhaled a breath that released the weight of her father, who had no answer for his daughter's line of thinking. Catherine looked up at Tavla, now examining her in full like a warrior studies a problem and was spotting solutions from a glance. Single or trial? Catherine asked. Don't answer that, Tavla. Lauza said, but the words flew past her like they were never spoken. Single. With the words spoken, they couldn't be undone. She had challenged a woman, blood oath to her father, in front of the woman and the person had sworn an oath to that woman. Lauza began to step up, but Catherine quickly placed her hand over Lauza, silently speaking to him, and to Tavla, I'll handle it. Tavla noticed this, but kept her gaze on Catherine. You challenge someone that is blood oath protected, not just by your father, but your chieftain. Catherine asked. She verbally gave Tavla the rope to escape, but the hole she buried herself in, but she declined it altogether. I do. Catherine this time was the one who stood up, and with the knowledge she possessed of the physical differences between them, knowingly measured up against Tavla with the imposing will of the full height advantage. Very well, after you. Tavla turned to walk out the room towards the frozen snow-covered ground where no one was. Lauza turned his head away from the two of them and stared at the table. His gaze lingered as if assessing if something about it needed to be fixed. Catherine, please tame my wild daughter. Catherine glanced at the chieftain warrior and then turned to the warrior who was willing to go against her father, against her chieftain, just because she didn't like her. As Tavla stood out in the training circle with the cold wind swirling and kicking up snow, Catherine came out in practice armor that was leather and animal skin. She didn't have her own set of armor because she was never a titled warrior, but she had been under her mom's scout training almost all her life. She knew how to defend herself, and even more if necessary. She met Tavla in the training circle and stood with the confidence of knowing exactly how to approach the situation from 4 different approaches. By Orc law, Catherine started, I have the right to have your father defend me being under the protection of this blood oath. Witnessed not just by me, but by at least 5 humans, his 2 warriors and my orc mother. Your challenge to me is a direct challenge to your chieftain and undermines his authority and decisions. Your challenge is by right of leadership, which only matters if I'm officially married to the chieftain, which I am not. As such, if you win, it would only allow you the option to recommend someone who you support as a marital candidate for the chieftain. It would not remove the blood oath protection. Only the death of your father, the chieftain, can do that. As such, if you are to lose this match, you would lose all rank, all valor from previous achievements. Your name would be struck from the records and you would be physically exiled, branded, and politically deceased among the clan. Even if you were to regain honor with another clan, the branded mark would prevent you from ever redeeming your honor. Even your children could not return. With a loss, the chieftain's line will die without a new child. This is the path you have chosen. These are the ramifications of your decision. Catherine took a battle stance with the practice sword in her hands as Tavla wasted no time and rushed in to attack. Lauza stood on the porch watching from a distance, having a strong and structural idea as to the foregone conclusion of the outcome to unfold. The challenge was concluded in about 5 minutes. It could have concluded sooner, but Catherine decided to embrace every attempt against her from her opponent. Tavla tried to pin her with hard strikes against the edges of the circle, but Catherine dodged and sidestepped each attack in a circle, parrying each attack to control the space in the circle. When she grew tired of that attempt, she tried to mix in some feints and martial art moves to overwhelm her, but Catherine would counter and immobilize her attacks by striking fast at openings in the structure of the attack. By the time Tavla realized her strategy wasn't working, she had sprained her wrist and rolled her ankle trying to regain balance after a counterpunch struck her ribs when trying to kick Catherine. It was at that moment that Catherine decided to finish the challenge with a combination attack of punches and a feint kick that turned into a grapple move and made her surrender. Lauza stepped off the porch and slowly walked to the practice circle. By this point, some elders and council members had come out of their houses to watch the human woman and the chieftain's daughter fighting in the frostbitten snow. Clansmen and some warriors watched from the warmth of their windows, but the witnesses were present. The town saw the outcome. All held their breath on the judgment that passed on Tavla. Lauza stood just outside the circle as both Catherine and Tavla stood inside of it. Tavla, you challenged Catherine under the blood oath consequences under the right of leadership for single combat. You were defeated soundly in battle. The transgression of such an act against your chieftain is unforgivable. Though you are my daughter, I cannot allow such an excusable act be overlooked. Therefore, Tavla, I give you this one option to redeem yourself. The Dwarven King has requested a trade with us under the acceptance of a marriage proposal to our clan. You will accept that proposal and live with the Dwarven nation. Tavla stood in the disgrace she had set herself in and bowed her head and fell to her knees. I accept, my chieftain. In the days that followed, Tavla left as soon as she had recovered from her wounds. Lauza sent word ahead of her to the Dwarven nation of her coming. Catherine formally accepted a marriage proposal from Lauza that was done after a treaty was signed with the other Orc clan. Their bond grew, and as the snow started to lift and the weather got warmer, Savina made the trek to the old home she once knew long ago. Catherine shared her woodworking skills with several orcs, and the carpenters began improving the homes and structures of the village with a finer quality of wood. As the village improved, the trade between other nations grew. Mineral materials with the dwarves were exchanged, plus the wood that Catherine produced, as well as the produce that the farm still grew, and the finer clothes and cloths from the humans. Some humans began to hear word of the orc village that was growing with an orc and human leading the village. Some merchants would travel there to see, and some humans chose to live close by. Catherine saw the development of everything coming along as if it were a dream that she didn't believe would manifest. One day, Catherine sat on the porch of her mother's home in the Bear Tusk clan, watching the day-to-day movement throughout the village as her mother sat in a rocking chair. What's on your mind, child? Catherine truly sat in awe of the view and shook her head. Tell me, mother, when Lauza made the blood oath to us, did you really see all this coming from it? Savina shook her head and laughed. Of course not, child. But when your father bought me from the slave blocks and let me go, I didn't see you coming out of that either. Life is a journey that we can't predict or control. All we can control is our own decisions that we can live with. You've done well for yourself, Catherine. Your father would be proud to see this, and I am honored to be alive to live it. This has been the first tale of the Oracle. I hope you enjoyed this story and the many more to come. Please leave a comment, like, and subscribe to the channel if this is one you wish to come back to.